Hello everyone. Today I'm working on my transmission. I've got the Muncie 4-speed transmission in my car. I went completely through it when I originally put it in the car to make sure it was good, and it looked like a brand new transmission on the inside, and it still does. But I did discover a couple things while I was checking it out, and I'll show that as I'm putting it back together so I can kind of explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. But while I have it apart, I want to put a drain plug in the transmission case, because from the factory for these years, this is a 65, they put the filler plug, but they didn't drill and tap it for a drain plug. The following years after that, they started drilling and tapping this. Why they didn't do it the first year, maybe they figured they didn't need to worry about draining it. But while I've got it out, I'm going to go ahead and drill and tap this. And then the jack shaft goes through here at this point, and this surface here goes against the bell housing. And there's a hole on the other end. The jack shaft goes in from the bottom, because the other end of the jack shaft where it goes through the housing is a couple thousandths bigger, so that it slip fits through everything, but then it's tight in this bottom hole, and then it's tight in this top hole, supposedly. Now I mic'd mine, and well, let me back up a little bit here. When I took it out and pulled it off the bell housing, I noticed it was wet around here. And I put sealant on there when I put that jack shaft in, because that's the only thing that seals it on this end, because it's a metal to metal fit. There's no O-ring or gasket or anything. And it fits tight. I mic'd it. It's got a thousandths clearance, which probably ideally it should be about a same size fit, so you tap it in there. But a thousandths is nothing. I mean, that won't hurt anything. So what I'm going to do this time, because I put sealant on it, and I guess over time it seeped a little bit. And the bell housing covers this, so it kind of almost seals it there again too, even though there's no gasket here. But it's still kind of seeped out. And I had a few drips hanging down on the bottom of the case here, and I'm thinking that's where it came from. It wasn't much. It wasn't like it was dripping on the floor, but it was kind of wet down through here. So what I'm going to do, instead of boring and bushing this back down for a thousandth of an inch, it's not worth the trouble. I'm going to put an O-ring groove in this to seal against the jack shaft. So anyway, this is what I'm going to put in it. And I've got a boring head where I can actually go down in there and cut an actual snap or O-ring groove down below the surface. But it's kind of a pain in that small of a hole to get in there and measure it to get your depth right and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a counterbore in here. So this O-ring will sit in from the end. It'll be held in. I'll put that sealant on it again, and then it'll be held in with the bell housing, so it can't come out. And I'll put the sealant on the shaft when I press it in or knock it in, and then I'll put sealant on this to hold it in place and snap it down. So it'll actually slip down over the outside of the jack shaft and go down into the counterbore, and it'll stick up just a little bit here, maybe 10 or 15 thousandths. So when I bolt the bell housing on, it'll clamp it in there so it can't move or come out. And that should seal it off. Hopefully I won't get any more seeping there at all. So the first thing I'm going to do, I got this dialed in. I took a last word indicator, dialed it in. It's kind of hard to show you, but if you spin it around there, it runs within about a half thousandths back and forth around there. So the bore's pretty good. So I've got it dialed in. So I'm going to put a boring bar in my boring head here, and then I can bore down. I can control the depth with the spindle, and then I'll feed this out, the right amount to get out to my diameter. Okay, now I'm going to reset this and put it on side so that I can go in and do this side hole. This one I can go ahead and put in and put the pipe sealant on it. This one I'm going to have to pull it out when I fill it, because you got to fill it up to this level here. So this would be the bottom of the transmission. So, okay, so we're going to start putting my Muncie 4-speed transmission back together. The first thing I want to mention is I buy some parts for my transmission from a guy named Paul, and I'm going to mispronounce his last name. There's his last name right there, Kangilansi or something like that. Really super nice guy. Very, very knowledgeable when it comes to manual transmissions, especially Muncie's. I'd consider him an expert on them. He knows more than majority of the people that do, even the ones that probably designed them originally. He really has a lot of knowledge. Anyway, recently I bought these two books from him. The main one I wanted to get was the Muncie 4-speed transmissions, and the other one is for high-performance manual transmissions. And they're both really good books. Even if you're not rebuilding one, they're definitely worth getting and reading. There's so much information in here and a lot of neat history and stuff about the transmissions and how they came about on some of these designs and stuff. But anyway, he's got a YouTube channel. It's Gearbox Videos, and he shows rebuilding different transmissions, a lot of stuff on Muncie's, a lot of stuff on Hirsch shifters. I bought a tune-up kit for my Hirsch shifter when I did this. I bought a brand new Hirsch shifter, and then I bought a tune-up kit from Paul, and it's got parts in it where you can tighten everything up in the shifter, make it shift a lot smoother and more consistent. So if you're needing that kind of stuff or any parts, he sells all kinds of parts. He's got other tools and lubricants and all that kind of stuff too for transmission. So anything you need, if you got questions, you can contact him. And he's definitely a good guy to get in touch with if you've got a Muncie or any manual transmission. I'm sure he'll be able to help you on it and get you going. So anyway, the first thing I got to do on this is I've got to pack the bearings in the jack shaft, and this is the jack shaft here. It's got loose bearings in it, and I can show you over here. There's this spacer goes in the center, and then there's two sets of these rollers. Needle bearings go on each end, and then there's hardened washers between the sets of rollers or needle bearings. And I bought a kit. Unfortunately, I didn't get it from Paul. He was out of them at the time, so I had to order it from somewhere else. But I ordered a kit that's got these needle bearings. It's got these washers. It's got the, if I can find it here. There's a bearing that goes up in the input shaft here on this end that the main shaft runs with needle bearings in here, but it's kind of a weird setup. I don't know why they did it this way, but you got this cage and you got the little needles, what they look like these, but I don't, there they are. There they are, you can see them right there. And you have to put them in here on the outside of this cage and then pack them with grease to hold them, or I'm gonna try, I got this heavy rubber band. I'm gonna try putting that around there and then slipping it down into this gear and then shoving it down in there to keep those rollers where they need to be. We'll see. The last time I did this, I just packed them, go to grease, and slid it down in there and it worked fine. So I might just go ahead and do that. I know that works. But pretty much everything's ready to go back together. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put these needle bearings in the jack shaft gear assembly. And there's 80 of these little rollers. And there's four sets of 20. So I'm gonna count them out. I have one extra roller, so I'm gonna put it in the bag for now. And hopefully I got it counted right. So there should be 4 sets of 20. So what you wanna do first is, I even grease up this tube and kind of keep it from flopping around in there. Just take and put a light layer of grease on this. Like that. And put that in. And it doesn't matter which end you start with, but you take one of the hardened washer, and put in the end here and just shove it in just a little ways, you know, about not quite the length of the first needle. And then you can pack this little bit of grease in there. And start putting your needles in. I think I might have to take these gloves off. I can't. It's hard to feel the needles when you're trying to do that. And you just keep working your way around like that until you get your first 20 in here. And once you get them in, you should be able to tell if you're a short one or not. If you have too big of a gap, then try putting one more in, just in case you miscounted. I'm sure guys like Paul probably they don't even count them. They just stick them in there. They know what it should look like once they get them in there. I like to double check myself. Make sure those are staying where you want them. And you can push up on that tube in the back side and kind of keep them all even, like that. Got 4 more to go in here. And that looks pretty good. It doesn't look like I could get any more in there. Kind of off the camera there. You can see them there. Okay, and then you go with your next washer. Like that. Then you can shove these down. And that grease should hold them in position. Okay, I got the last washer, grease it up good. That should be it. Now what I'll do is I'll run that jack shaft through there, and it goes through this direction. This notch goes to the smaller gear. You want to start it in there easy because you don't want to knock any of those rollers out. And slide it all the way through. Whoa, see that suction in there. Squeezing all the excess grease out. Okay, so no rollers came out this end when I did that, so all of them should have stayed in place then, because there's no room for them to go anywhere else except out the end here if they're not in the seated in there. Okay. Now you want to spin that shaft to make sure it doesn't feel weird or anything. It's going to be a little tight because of that grease, but it should spin. Okay. So now what I have to do is take the housing, put the two thrust washers in, put them in there with grease so it holds them in place, drop this gear assembly down in there without the shaft, and then I can put the input shaft in and bolt it in place, and then come back in and put this shaft back in. I'm going to take and put these thrust washers in on each end here where the jack shaft goes in, and hold them in place. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on them. Okay, there's the back one. I'll do the front one now. Get them all greased up good. Okay, you can see there's the back thrust washer, there's the front thrust washer. So we'll drop the gear assembly in there next without the jack shaft going through it, because it's got to be in there before you can put the input shaft in this end. Okay, you can see the washer's still there on both ends. So I'm going to be very careful putting this in here and not bump it or anything, because I don't want to lose my rollers. I don't want to bump my thrust washers out of position. It's kind of a trick getting it down in here without doing all that. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to put the input shaft in here. Okay. Now I should be able to put this back through here. Pretty close. Okay. That's starting in the hole. I want that back a little bit. Okay. Okay, there's a couple things here. On this end, I need to have this pin turned 180 degrees. You want this piece over here, down over here. This notch. So, you need to turn that. Like that, so it's horizontal with the bottom of the case. That looks pretty close. Okay, let me get some sealant for this end, and I use this stuff here. It's a Permatex anaerobic gasket maker, part number 51813. You can get it about anywhere. I ordered it on Amazon because I can buy like 4 tubes, but I think you can get it at any auto parts store. They might have to order it for you, but they can get it. And it's just a red gooey stuff. Put it down in here. I think it's starting to rain. I'm gonna have to probably stop videotaping because I don't know if you can hear me, but hear how loud that rain is in here. Yeah, it spins really nice. The rain's finally letting up. You can hear me again. Man, that's the bad thing in this metal building. When it rains, it sounds like we're getting a heck of a storm, which this time we did get a pretty good rain. I bet we got a half an inch of rain or so, maybe. Okay. So the next thing I need to do is go down in here and put that caged roller bearing. I gotta grease it up, put a rubber band on it, and drop it down in there. And then I can put my jack shaft in right here. Show you here. In right here for the reverse gear. And then we can drop the main shaft down in here. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is start putting the main shaft in and the little counter shaft for the reverse gears. I need to set this case up on end, and because it's got this big shaft sticking out the end of it, I'm gonna have to set it up on this bell housing, and I can drop it down in there like that. And it doesn't matter how you put it on there, it's just to hold it. It's just to hold it in place while you're doing the assembly. And I turned it around backwards on the bell housing actually, so I could have this opening facing the camera. So first thing I'm gonna do is put that needle bearing in this part of the gear. Okay, so this is the retainer that was in the transmission. It's in good shape, so I'm gonna use it over again. But that kit I ordered comes with new rollers. There are 17 rollers on this. So I'm gonna put 17 new rollers on here. So I keep them from rolling away on me. And you have to use grease to hold them in here. So I've got this container of grease, really sticky grease. I'll take and smear some on here. And they won't fall through because the hole in this retainer is smaller than the outside diameter of the roller. So that's what kind of holds them in place for you. Okay. Down in here. And I want to push those rollers out against the inside of that gear so my shaft will go down in there easily. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, I've got these two thrust washers for the, I call it the jack shaft for the reverse gear. And the one with the little tab on it, on the top here, that's the one that goes down here in the housing. This one goes on the shaft between the gear and the roll pin that's in the shaft. We're going to start off with this one. I'm going to put some grease on it to kind of help hold it in place. This little tab has to go down in this notch right here. And then I grease the face of it too, just so it's got some lubricant till all the oil gets splashed around in there good once you start driving the car. Okay, so that goes in there like that. You see how that notch goes in that notch in the case. I took a machine to 45-degree angle on the back of the teeth here because sometimes they can hit the main shaft gear a little bit. So I just machined, some guys grind them on there. I put it on the lathe and actually cut it. This gear is hard, but I cut it with carbide and just put a little bit of clearance on there. That won't hurt anything. It's still got plenty of gear to drive the reverse gear. This hub goes in like this with the teeth down when the housing's facing up like this. Again, I'm gonna put just a little bit of grease on this face right here, just to give it a little bit of lubricant. Not much, because it'll splash that oil around pretty quick. I'll put a little bit in the splines there, and you just slide that in there, because you can't put it in once you put the main shaft in. And you can just leave it loose in there like that, okay? You don't put the other shaft in yet. Okay, So we're gonna drop the main shaft assembly in from this end down into that bearing I just put in there. I wanna make sure that I put this back on first, the synchronizer back down here on this cone right here to hold it in place for now. And we'll have to, when we drop the shaft in, we'll have to make sure we line up with these key notches. There's 2 gaskets for the mid plate. You wanna make sure you grab the right gasket for this surface. You can see, let me put them together here. And there's a big difference. You can tell as soon as you put it on the casting, on the housing. But you can see how this one bulges out on the side. You want the one that's narrower to go on this surface, and it'll sit on there just like that. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some of this anaerobic gasket maker from Permatex. It's a part number 51850. And I'm gonna put that a few spots around here just to give it something to grip to keep that gasket from shifting around on me. If you had a lot of dings and dents in here, you'd want to put a thin coat all the way around. Mine looks pretty flat. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and put a thin coat all the way around. It doesn't take much, just something to kind of help seal it off. This is a really good product to use because you can not only use it like for this application, but I use it almost like a Loctite because it will kind of lock fasteners and plus seal it. So if you've got a bolt that goes into your oil area, or even like a water pump, you can put that on the bolts and you put them in there, and it will not only seal the passages from leakage, it will work like a Loctite to keep the fastener from coming loose. So it does dual purpose. And it's anaerobic, so it will set up. Basically, anaerobic means the absence of air. So it actually needs the absence of air to set up and get hard. Where like RTV and stuff, you put it in there, clamps it down, can't get air to it. It will set up eventually, but it takes longer. So this is a little bit nicer that way. Okay, so I've got that on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a little layer on this side of the gasket now. Okay, there we go. Now you gotta be kind of careful you don't drop this down in there. Okay, I'm gonna put just a little bit of assembly lube down here on these gears. I'll run down on the gears. Okay, now I'm gonna lift the main shaft assembly up on here. Drop it down in here. Okay, I might pull back out. I got to pull this down further, but I don't want to pull too far. It'll fall out and I'll lose my keys in there. So let me pull that back out, and I've got to drop it down quite a bit further. Okay, this shifter hub was all the way up to here. I had to move it down here because I've got to clear this gear down here from this piece for it to drop down in that hole. So hopefully I got it down far enough. We'll try it here and see. I gotta be careful. I don't want to lose those. There's 3 little keys in that shift hub, and I don't want to lose those. I'm falling out, drop down. And this thing's not exactly light, so you got to kind of. Okay, there it goes. This reverse gear just laying in the housing, so it's dragging on there, and so I gotta hold it up. Sounds bad there, but you lift this up and you don't hear that. Okay, so the next thing to go in is the reverse gear cluster here. That's what this is. This goes down into that gear. You can see that thrust washer right here. I can take this shaft out, and there's my old thrust washer. And I'm gonna grab the new one. A little bit of grease on it. You can use grease or that assembly lube I was using. Okay. A little bit of lube in there. Okay, I'm going to put the gasket on here next. Okay, this is where the shifter shaft comes out for the reverse gear. I put a new seal in it, lubed it up with some of that assembly lube, and now I've got to put this spring on this ball down in that hole you see right there. Okay, that drops down in there like that. I'm gonna put a little bit of grease on this to keep it kind of from falling out there while I'm trying to get the shaft in there. Now the tricky part, some guys take little bitty, looks like they use little bitty putty knives, grind them down to hold that ball down while you slide this shaft in. I don't have anything that small, so I'm gonna try to put this in using a feeler gauge. I don't know if that'll work or not. The ball clears the shaft, but then I gotta get it compressed down to go into two little detents down here. You know what, I'm gonna try 25 thousandths. Something I can push that ball down with and hold it down, and then slide that arm over it. Hey, I think that worked. That worked. I used 25 thousandths, and you can see it locks back and forth on the ball. Now to put this together, you have to shove this arm the rest of the way out, and the good thing is it doesn't come off the ball. You can see the ball right there. So you have to shove this all the way in and put the little, I don't know what you call it, the little shoe on here, this piece here. It goes onto the little flange that's on the big reverse gear, and that's what shifts it in and out of reverse. Put some grease in here, and grease on this to hold it in place. I'm even gonna put a little bit of grease in that. No, it's just for the fun. Okay. So now this is ready to go on to the transmission housing. Okay, so there's a couple of things we want to do before we try to put that housing on here. You want to make sure that this roll pin is pointed straight to the top, straight up and down, with the transmission pointing straight to the top of the transmission. Like that. Because it has to drop down into that little slot right there. Okay, the fun part is I got to hold this gear up here and put it on this little shoe right here in that slot on here, and then lower the whole thing down and get that to drop down into here and keep it all from falling apart while I'm doing that. Not even close. I guess I'm gonna have to take that up on the splines. I didn't really want to do that. Okay, I'm gonna take a break. Okay, I found out I was just trying too hard to get it down on there. All you have to do is hold that gear up so it's still on the splines, lower that down, and then you can kind of wiggle it, and I shoved that gear in and it went right in, and now it works. Drop it down, no, you can't hold it. So we're good there. So now I just need to put these bolts back in. The bottom bolts are 7/16. They take a 5/8 wrench, and then the top three bolts are 3/8, and they take a 9/16 wrench. I'm going to put some of this stuff on there for like a Loctite. That looks better. Okay, that does that. This is a new bullet I made. I've got a new gear. Now I took and milled the slot in this piece to where it fits really good on this tab, so it can't twist back and forth, it can't move up and down. Okay. You see the gear turns in there? That's good. Okay, so last thing we need to do is put the cover plate on here with the shift forks, and then put the arms and everything back on it. Okay, even though I put new seals in this 5,000 miles ago, I went ahead and I popped the old seals out for the shifter shafts for the reverse, and also for the 1, 2, and 3, 4. So I'm going to put new ones in. I'm just going to put a little bit of gasket maker around the outside of it, just in case there's any pinholes in the casting that could leak by. So this will help them to stay in there better. And I just take a socket that's about the same size as a seal. And this counterbore is deeper than the width of the socket, so you just Kind of tap them down in there till all the way down in there and kind of feel them seat. Like that. And then I want to get the excess gasket maker off there, and then I will take and put some assembly lube, if I can get a little bit more out of this bottle. I'm just about out. And just lube up that seal. And then that bore. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to put the shift location locks in here. I don't, which are identical, so I can just flip it over. And I can tell by the wear that that's the way they came out. Just like that. I'm just going to put the old one back in there. There we go. And then the spring goes, you want to put it to where these loop up. That way it can't come off and go inside the transmission. If I can get it in there with these pliers. There we go. So if it tries to come off, it's going to hit that housing and it won't be able to come off. So there you go. And I marked these, so I'm putting them back in the same holes they came out of. They're identical, so it shouldn't matter, but once something's been in a hole and working, you want to put it back so it matches up. There we go. And the same way with the forks. I've got them marked so I know this one came out of this hole and that one came out of that hole. So I'm going to lubricate them up and put them back in where they came out. Okay, that's ready to go back in. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't think the front one matters, or the fourth gear, but this one here, you want to be in second gear because otherwise your fork will hit this right here, this casting. There we go. Ran out of assembly lube, so I'm gonna use this stuff. It's just a different type of assembly lube. It's not quite as sticky as or as thick as that red stuff. A little bit down in there. See, it looks more like a grease. That other stuff, pretty sticky. Again, we got to clean up this surface. Make sure your gasket fits. I'm gonna put some of my gasket maker on here just to seal it off. These holes are blind, so I don't need to seal them, but I am still going to use some of this on that to work like a Loctite on the bolts. Okay. So I've got this shifted into second. I've got this in second. This should be in neutral. And it should just drop down on there. Like that. And there you go. I've already put the that sealant on the threads. Like I said, these are blind holes, but I'm using it as a Loctite. And it's funny, this stuff even smells like Loctite. It's Permatex brand. It's not Loctite brand, but it smells just like Loctite. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna put the two arms on here. This 3/4, it goes with the numbers up, and you can see how it's bent up. Just like that. And the 1/2 goes with the numbers down, and the offset down. Like that. Now we need to do the same thing on the reverse. The only other thing I got to do here on this reverse one is, okay, you can see this hole right here. It's a steel tapered pin, and it goes in from the top, and there's a groove in the shaft that locks this in position so it can't move in and out. You want to put a little bit of sealant on it, and you don't want to put any in this top hole because it's going to push it down into where that shaft is. So you put it on the top of the pin, and then the bottom of the hole here. You just tamp that in. Okay, and the last thing to do is put this shift lever on. The only thing left to do is put the shifter back on here, and this transmission is done. I gotta remember to put oil back in it though. Okay, so just gonna mount this back on here. Okay. This piece back in here to make these all in neutral. Like that. Okay, so I have my 1/4-inch plastic rod through the hole in the shifter, holding all these linkages in the neutral position. And I have all the arms in the neutral position. So what I want to do is put my bushing on here. Grease it up. And that should just slip in that hole without moving. I could have left that nut on and put this clip in from the bottom, but I don't like that because if it works loose or something, it could fall out. So I always like to put them in from the top. Like that. And there you go. Okay, and then I've got this one ready. That goes where it goes. And do the same thing. Slip that. Now I have the last one to do here. Got it lined up, it goes right in. Paul sell these too. They come around, they wrap around, they wrap around the shaft a little further than the factory ones do, so they're a little less likely to come back off again. Paul put a lot of thought into his rebuilds, and he's come up with a lot of improvements on things that And there we go. The transmission is ready to go back in the car. Okay, so I think that's it. That's probably about all we're gonna do on the transmission now. It's all done, it's back together. It's ready to go back in the car. As you can see, not being a professional, I struggle with things. If you watch Paul do a transmission on his channel, it's like watching a surgeon. He's amazing, super guy. So if you want to see a professional doing it, go to his channel. It's Gearbox Videos, and go to his website. It's super661.com. I'll put a link in the description. And you can order parts from him. You can order whole transmissions. You can order tools. I appreciate you watching, and like I always say, have a great day, and we'll see you on the next video.